Welcome back, everybody. Good to have you. Can I just start by saying it warms my heart to see so many of you still excited to play the Barbarian this season. The reception for the last video that we launched, Whirlwind Natural Disaster, was insane. So much so, I've decided to really buckle down and revisit the build and min-max the absolute crap out of it. And I feel like we've come up with something pretty interesting here. You saw what it can do in the intro. This build can absolutely decimate everything. Pit 90, you're going to be able to carry 4-man bosses, and everything else at that point is pretty much trivialized. Versus the previous video, it's faster, it's stronger, it's a natural evolution of the build. That being said, if the last one was an end game build, this is an ultra end game build. The gear requirements are high, and you will need a pretty high Paragon level as well, somewhere around 250. Now, with all that being said, we're going to jump into it. We're going to talk about how it works, the skills, the Paragon, and the gear. Remember, for all of the nitty-gritty stuff, the build planner will be down in the description below. So let's have a look at the build, and we'll go through things assuming that you haven't watched the previous video, just to make sure that there's nothing that's missed. Let's kick things off by going over how the build works, the sort of core mechanics behind it, and then everything else that we talk about should make a lot more sense from that point. So though this is a Whirlwind build, all of our damage is actually coming from Dust Devils and coming from Earthquakes. So we don't scale the actual Whirlwind damage itself, and instead we go for generic damage increases that will apply to our Dust Devils and to our Earthquakes. The way that we're creating those as well is that we are using a combination of runes here that we have called back and tech. So for every 10 meters that we move, we'll create Earthquakes. And just by staying in motion will create a ton of Earthquakes, and Whirlwind forces you to move, so it synergizes very well that way. As we do that, we'll also be creating Dust Devils from these Earthquakes thanks to the new Paragon node. It's called Force of Nature, which is just over here. So there's a 75% chance that our Earthquakes will create Dust Devils that deal an insane amount of damage. These do a lot. But we are also creating Dust Devils through the Fierce Winds aspect, which is going to be every time we use a shout, we create 3 Dust Devils. And to make all of this work even better, we're tempering on ground stomps have a chance, or sorry, Earthquakes have a chance to cast twice, and also Dust Devils have a chance to cast twice. So if I just walk around here, you'll see that we'll get 1, and then we got 2. So we'll be able to create a ton that way and just basically fill a room up with tornadoes, which is where we're doing all of our damage, and all of our choices are based around making that happen more frequently and making those Dust Devils hit harder. Now, the main difference between this build and the previous version of the build is going to be the introduction of Uber Uniques and also Locran's Amulet. So we're using a Grandfather now, and we're also using Heir of Perdition along with that Locran's, and we're scaling a lot of our damage through max resource. The way that that works is that firstly we have the Magnum Opus, and despite the wording on the Magnum Opus, it does actually scale the damage of your Dust Devils and your Earthquakes based on how much max fury that you have. And you can see here, just sort of sitting in town with no buffs, I have 312, so that's a lot of damage. Then the Locran's itself also gives you a pretty substantial damage multiplier for each point of resource that you have over 100. So you're getting 2 birds, 1 stone by stacking resource this way, and it allows you to do a pretty insane amount of damage. Now, many of you may notice I'm using Fist of Fate as well. This does now work with Magnum Opus. Previously, there was a bug with it, but now it's actually doing just fine. You don't have to do the whole re-equip, unequip stuff when you are moving into a new instance. It just works right out of the gate. Next is the removal of the Ugly Bastard helmet in favor of Heir of Perdition. With this build, I can't quite guarantee 100% uptime on berserking, especially on a boss. So Ugly Bastard loses some of its value there. And also the movement speed on this one just feels really good. In testing, this was just far more consistent and also just far more smooth, better utility than what the Ugly Bastard was providing. We are still using Rage of Harrogath. This is because we are using the Whirlwind that applies a bleed. So as we're sort of swinging through enemies, we'll be getting a substantial cooldown to our shouts. If the group is big enough, they'll be basically off all of the time. And Eret's Bearing to keep our Call of the Ancients on a basically 100% uptime as well. So the reason we're using this over Wrath of the Berserker, we get a ton of Fury regen from this, a lot of damage and attack speed, but primarily it's that uptime. Wrath of the Berserker, maybe you can get it down to like a 20-second cooldown with everything going off, but this will be up permanently. So you get all of this power all of the time, which is absolutely fantastic. As far as changes to the Paragon board go as well, there are a couple. We are having to go into a lot of all resist nodes, and this is why you're going to need a pretty high Paragon levels, because you will need to pick these up. This build is quite light on the all res, so you need these. We are also swapping out one of the previous glyphs for, I think it was Exploit. We're swapping that for Wrath now. We have a Grandfather. We want to scale that crit damage. We have 100% crit as well, so that damage multiplier for the Legendary node is absolutely juiced. Really, really, really liking that. Then as far as the skill tree goes, not too much has changed here. I realize I have a point in the wrong place there, but we have basically the same thing here. Nothing has really changed on this side of the things. As far as the arsenal setup goes, pretty much the same deal here as well. Still using two-handed sword technique for the extra vulnerable damage. It is, of course, a dual wield build. Very important that your Whirlwind is set to dual wield, or you won't be getting the damage bonus from Magnum Opus or from Wallop, which is over here. Wallop only requires that you have a mace. It doesn't need to be a two-hander, so as long as your offhand is a mace, you are absolutely fine. There are some slight temper differences from the previous video as well. Dust Devils is here and Earthquakes is here. We've swapped the two around. Reason being, you get more Dust Devils from having more Earthquakes, so you get that value from the Earthquakes anyways, but also the Earthquakes themselves don't mess around. They do a ridiculous amount of damage. It's absolutely crazy how much damage that they do. And then just a quick sort of gameplay preview here, just how you would play it. Got crit damage on. We'll go for multiple dummies here to make it look real good. We'll just pop these up and I'll show you a rotation. You'll go for the ground stomp, get Kota, start spinning, and then just pop your shouts. And you just kind of wail away here non-stop. You don't have to ground stomp all of the time. Most of the time I don't, but it really does help ramp that single target damage up when you want to do it. You can see there are some very healthy crits in here, if you can read it at all. There's a couple that are going up into like 400, 500 million, and this is without buffs, mind you. And I wouldn't even say that my gear is 100% either. This is pretty min-maxed, you know, level 100 glyphs. Also, you know, most of my gear is at least 2 out of 3 masterwork. Forgot how many numbers there are. We will slowly keep min-maxing this, you know, make sure that we're not overcapping on Dust Devil size. Like I actually have overcapped on Dust Devil size by 10%, so that's a waste of a temper here. Not a waste of a temper, a masterwork. We'll move things around, but I still feel like there is like 20-30% extra damage to be gotten from this. It is a really, really high-end build. It's very expensive, so taking a long time to get all of those materials through, but my god, is it not powerful. Like you would have seen in the intro, and we'll show it again here on the screen. Cleared a very high pit with this. The Horde is an absolute smash fest. It's very easy, very relaxed. Actually, a perfect build for me while streaming. And then everything else, again, you know, it's just a joke. You can absolutely annihilate tormented bosses and everything else in the game on Torment 4. And that's where we've got to with the build so far. I'll keep the planner the most up to date, so if there are any changes, I usually leave those in the change log. And if there's a big substantial amount of changes, I will do another video in the future. Well, I hope the build serves you well. Sorry it took me so long to get this video out. For those of you who have been watching me on stream make it, if you have any questions, leave them down in the comments or pop into the stream at some time, and I'll try my best to help out there. And I'll catch you boys on the next one. I'll catch you later. Bye bye. Love you. Bye bye. Bye bye. Bye.